Hey, friends, welcome back. How are you?
You've made it through. We're here at the final session. I'm getting a little mournful, but we're glad that you're here and we are closing out with a bang today. So excited you decided to join us.
And y'all, we've already gotten to look in the eyes of these panelists. I cannot wait to just introduce you to them today. But first, we want to introduce you to us. If you don't know us, hey, I'm John. This is Becky. We have spent our careers together in nonprofit development and fundraising and fell in love with just the power of philanthropy, which led us to starting We Are for Good in 2020. A really wonderful time to be starting a business. But not only do we have a podcast, but we're really building this media ecosystem that's all about an impact uprising. And being a change agent, the everyday philanthropist is like the heartbeat of that. And so today's conversation is just, got us all jazzed.
And we're going to be taking notes because we want to be that change agent too. But before we get started, we want to get to know you. This is the conversation stage. It's not a conversation for just us and our panelists. We want you to be an integral part of this topic today. So drop your name and where you're coming from in the chat. And I love that people already did it before I actually started to say it. And I've actually seen some people drop their
Fort
LinkedIn
Collins
in there. So connect with each other. We want this to be really organic. So I'm glad that you're here.
Okay, so it is a sincere honor to introduce these panelists to you, and I want to get started with Alia Whitney-Johnson. Oh my goodness, y'all. I don't even know where to start, but she is the COO of LALA, which is the Latin American Leadership Academy. She's also the co-founder of Emerge Global. If you do not know Emerge Global, the work that they've done in Sri Lanka, her heart for Sri Lanka girls that have been faced some of the most difficult situations, child sexual abuse victims, just her heartbeat. You just feel through the screen today. But get this, she's also just casually a civil and environmental engineering grad from MIT, where she was a Rhodes Scholar. She is joining us today from Columbia, and we just feel your heart from here, Alia. Good to see you.
And Julie, you got to drop Alia's episode because it is such a powerful one. We want you to check out more about Emerge Global. We want to build that brand. We want to empower more girls. And speaking of the girl empowerer, I got to introduce Tara Abrahams, one of our favorite humans on the planet. She's the head of impact at the Meteor. If you don't know about the Meteor, you need to go immediately and check out this incredible impact-driven media company. And I am a subscriber myself, but she is also the board member for She's the First, which I just happen to be a monthly donor of because I believe in every girl choosing their own world. But she is this passionate global advocate for girls and women. And at the Meteor, she uses the power of storytelling to advance one of the greatest causes of our time, which is the freedom and dignity of all women. I've already mentioned She's the First, but I love it so much. I got to go deeper into that organization because it's one of my favorites. But it reaches 150,000 girls around the world each year and has this incredible International Center for Research on Women, which is this research institute working to accelerate global progress toward gender equity. I am here for that, mom of 2 daughters. She also leads global efforts related to women's empowerment and anti-racism as a board member, casually at the Harvard Alumni Association. She's an incredible mom, too, of 3 beautiful kids, and she's based out of New York City.
So good to see you, Tara. And I am so delighted to introduce you to my friend Tania Bhattacharyya. She is calling in from California. And let me just tell you, we tap Tania for lots of things in our life. And so she's been multiple guests on the podcast, but you may know her as the founder of Lumos Marketing. There's your Harry Potter reference. But she really is all about helping social entrepreneurs and people that are pouring into this work, specifically women of color, to find and amplify their story and to share it really boldly. So she is a strategist and really brilliant on LinkedIn also. So she's a great follow if you're looking for that. But also she hosts one of our favorite podcasts, The Campfire Circle, where she just has real, authentic conversations about what's cutting through right now, but also through an incredible lens that I know she's going to bring to the conversation today. So I mentioned she's from California, but she's truly one of our dearest friends and a deeply good human. So good to see you, Tania.
And last but certainly not least, the only man who could round out this incredible group of women right here, our dear friend, Alex Aide. He's the Director of Programs and Impact at Born This Way Foundation. If you don't know about Born This Way Foundation, don't walk, run right now and check it out. It was started and co-founded by a little-known woman called Lady Gaga and her mother, Cynthia Germanata. And they've worked for over 10 plus years with and for young people to build the kinder, braver world that we all know is possible. The way they walk through their work is so humane and inclusive. It is something that we just want to lift and amplify at every point. He oversees all of the foundation's programming, including their Channel Kindness initiative and their Be There certificate. I got to put a little plug in there. Go check out the Be There certificate. Please go get it, because we want kindness rippling throughout our communities. He's based in New York City, and you are my favorite program manager, who is also a West Virginia attorney, my friend. So glad to see you here. All right.
Okay, can we just keep emoting, or do we want to get into some
Should we
content?
actually talk about change agencies? Yes. So I think I want to start a little bit with, how do we become a change agent? And the reason we started this conversation and we wanted to set up this panel is because we have heard from so many in our community that say, I want to do more. I want to do more than my day-to-day work. I am actually looking and seeing the opportunities that exist within our organizations to get more people involved. I'm seeing the harm that's perpetuated by not speaking up. And y'all, this is just a moment. It is a special moment in time where never before have we had the level of power of seeing what our missions can produce, how we can bring facts and truth to bear to unite more people around incredible causes. So we want your voice in this. If you're someone who's a little trepidatious about being vulnerable, sharing your story, we're going to give you just a little bit of armor today, because these 4 people are going to be your hype squad, of course, with John and I. But we really want to talk about, how do you get activated? And Tania, I want to start with you a little bit. And we had talked in an earlier session about, we can't just look at the iceberg as what's on the top, because what is really building underneath is the potential of what could be unleashed. So talk about some of those things under the iceberg that people may not see from the outside, but they're so necessary to becoming a really powerful thought leader and a change agent. You have done this beautifully. Walk us through the beginnings of that.
Yeah, I love this concept of the iceberg, right? Because so often, like what we see when we look at beloved change agents like the Obamas, like Greta Thunberg, like Lady Gaga, right? We see certain things visibly from the outside, like awards, being invited to sit on prestigious panels and attend world-class events. But there's so many things that are happening behind the scenes under the tip of that iceberg, right? And so just a very non-exhaustive list, like a short list, I would say would include like the slow and tender process of dismantling our own systematically limited beliefs, right? Like imposter thoughts, like people pleasing, like perfectionism. What's happening behind the scenes is those brave, thoughtful conversations with the people who don't agree with what you have to say, right? Community organizing strategy and determining who we need to link arms with to have the deepest possible impact, because we are so much stronger together, right? Habits like self-care, like community care, which is usually so invisible to the rest of the world, but is really key in this work of change making. And, the last thing that I would say, and again, this is not the full list, there's so many things under the iceberg, but something that's been really impactful for me is building my own personal board of directors. And I call this my campfire circle. And this came up really heavily when I was a nonprofit ED. And I made a public post, a LinkedIn post, in support of a women's reproductive healthcare organization. And I was surprised to see some negative comments and engagement from existing donors of our organization, especially since we were also a maternal healthcare organization. And so in that moment, I was kind of at a loss. I knew I did the right thing for saying what I believed in, right? But I was kind of at a loss, right? It was a sticky situation. So I reached out to a wide variety of mentors and colleagues, all with different perspectives, politics, experiences, who I knew would share their best wisdom with me. And that gave me that soft pad to land on and decide on a pathway forward. So that's just, a supportive board of directors, a personal board of directors is just one of the things under the iceberg. That just goes hand in hand with change-making work. So how does that land with you, Becky? I'll pass it back to you.
That lands like a soft, warm blanket or a nice mom hug. That's exactly how it is.
Want the bonfire right here on this table. I mean, I
Truly.
love that imagery. And Alex, I want to tap your brain because, what y'all have done through Born This Way is you've activated thousands, tens of thousands of youth to pour into this work. Not only just using their story, but really using it to power more kindness in the world. So will you talk about what's it look to get change agents activated at a grassroots level?
Yeah, and first I have to thank you all for the incredibly kind introduction. I have to thank the entire We're for Good team having me here. And I'm really honored to be on this panel with everyone here. So thank you all. I love this question. Born This Way, we're all about empowering young people to be change agents in their communities. We believe, right, that young people have the power to make a difference, to create a kinder, more compassionate world. And so from our end, we provide them with the tools and the resources they need to take action. And maybe even beyond that a little bit, right? We celebrate that. Young people very often innately see things they want to change in the world, and society sometimes tells them, no, like that's not cool, can't do that. And we actually take the opposite view. We celebrate what they envision changing in the world. And from our end, right, we add on top of that tools to help them take care of their mental health and inspire kindness, whether that's through our Be There certificate program that you mentioned at the top, our Be Kind 365 platform that invites people to pledge to an act of kindness every day to help build that kinder, braver world that we all envision. And we also work with partners and organizations to create opportunities for young people to find community together or get involved in causes that really matter to them. So by empowering and celebrating young people that want to be change agents, we're not only just creating a kinder world, right? We're also helping them develop leadership skills that will benefit them throughout their lives.
Okay, that's so brilliant. And this is why I got to give Born This Way Foundation just a shout out, because that ability to listen, to be empathetic, that is just hardwired into your culture. You are truly building and empowering this next generation of change agents, and letting them know that their voice matters, their lived experience matters. You all have done this beautifully. I love in the chat, I've seen somebody that is already crediting, Tamara's crediting Born This Way with connecting her to the Youth Voices Rising. So I love how homogenous this is already becoming. But I got to kick it to Tara, because as head of the Meteor, your board chair, She's the First, you have this really unique lens. And I got to say, Tara is just the board director that everybody wants. She gives all of the power back to her ED. She asks for education, and she is just so empowering with the way that she steps with her volunteerism. But I want you to talk about, how can we look beyond, the horizon to make changes, that will change the systems of tomorrow? Talk about what you've seen in your role.
Sure. And thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be virtually with you. I wish we could all have this party in real life. So I think in answer to your question about systems, I was thinking about this idea of just listening, to be honest. For me, it really does start with listening. And in the case of She's the First, which, as you mentioned at the top, Becky, it's about really making sure that we are empowering girls to be educated, respected, and heard, and live the life that they want to live. Girls should be at the center, and are at the center of everything that we do at She's the First. And we are really led by them as the experts of their own lives. They are the ones who can most effectively tell us what they need, what they dream of, and what they want to see in the world. One of the things that we did, I guess almost 5 years ago, was Girl Source, as distinct from Crowdsource, a global girls' Bill of Rights, where we talked to hundreds of girls around the world and gave them the prompt of, what would you put in a Bill of Rights, in a sort of document memorializing what you believe your fundamental human rights are, whether that's freedom to go to school, freedom to be free from cultural bias, freedom just to walk down the street without being harassed, assaulted, or violated. I mean, these are just kind of fundamental things that girls told us they wanted, they needed. Another thing that we love to do at She's the First is really position the girls literally as the experts at conferences and high-level events, as distinct from, let's say, the amazing policymakers or global leaders that are working on this issue at the grass tops. But for us, we kind of even play a little trick on the audience, saying, come to this panel, come to this session where you're going to hear from experts with decades of experience in food insecurity, the caregiving economy, girls' education, public health, water. And then when the panel starts, out walk 4 adolescent girls, right? From Sierra Leone, from Uganda, from Nepal, from Guatemala, because they are truly the experts in what it takes to change systems. We've heard a lot over the past very challenging few years that these systems are not broken, actually, right? working exactly as they were designed to work, but it's because they weren't designed by us. So they weren't built for us. And so for me, when I think about changing systems, it's really about turning things over to the people who are closest to what it means when those systems aren't designed and built for us. And we see that in our work at the Meteor as well, right? The Meteor is all about basically amplifying the voices that are out there, but can't get sometimes the traction in the very traditional media landscape. You know, they can't break through some of the algorithms. Our job at the Meteor is to make sure that women, girls, gender nonconforming people, the LGBTQ plus community, the indigenous voices, people with disabilities, that they have as much access to tell their stories and to change culture and to change systems as anyone else out there.
Tara's taken us to church, and I'm here for it. That was beautiful, my friend.
And I just know from spending time, I agree, from spending time with Alia, like this is so much part of your story. I think of, when I hear listening, I think of your story. And so I just want to give you the floor. I don't want to go to the next question because I think you have so much insight around just how listening shaped your experience and how that, you know, kind of created Emerge.
Sure. I mean, as I'm listening to Tara, I'm thinking we should have a panel of She's the First young women here today talking about being a change agent, right? Because they are the people who are making change in the communities, right? They are the people who are closest to the problems. And how do we amplify those voices? But I so appreciate you lifting up the power of listening. I think so often when we come into these spaces where we're asked to provide wisdom or expertise, is about talking. And actually, I think one of the things that's been most important to me on my journey is just taking a step back and listening to every single young person that I've had the honor of working with. I've worked for about 17 years with young women who've been through unbelievable challenges, rape, trauma, trafficking, but also have these incredible dreams for their communities and are fighting for their sisters and their families and making the world better. And how do I leverage my position to really understand the change they're trying to make and amplify it, right? And really do my job to listen because they have the answers. So thank you, Tara.
You guys inspire us every dang time we hang out with you. Thank you. I'm loving the synergy of this. Love the suggestion that was just thrown into the chat about trees, water, and people being a great resource. So if someone's looking for additional information, we want to check this out. So thank you for lifting that. I want to talk about and sort of move into chapter 2 of like, how do we foster the right cultures for these right systems level changes? And I want to go to you, Alia, first. Like, how does collaboration and coalition building allow you to go further with your impact messages? I know you've seen this play out over at Emerge, probably also too at LALA. Like, take us through that and what you've discovered.
Sure. Thanks, Becky. I'm sure for everybody who's here today, the issues that we're working on don't exist in a vacuum, right? If we're trying to change something, we can go further together. It's impacted by systems, by different actors, by policy, by all sorts of different forces, right? And it really takes all of us coming together to make a big dent in these issues. And so I want to give you a concrete example. About 10 years ago, I moved from Sri Lanka, where I was working on Emerge, to San Francisco, back to the United States where I was from. And I discovered that San Francisco was a hub of child sex trafficking in the United States. And not only that, but around 70%, there's not great data, but around 70% of kids who are in the sex trade in San Francisco grew up in our child welfare system. So these were kids who our state and our city were responsible for taking care of. I left my job as a management consultant and decided I wanted to do something about preventing exploitation. And what I learned as I talked to young people on the street was that not only had there been this pipeline from our child welfare system into exploitation, but once young people were exploited, they were actually not only placed back into child welfare, but disproportionately placed into institutional care instead of placed into family-based care. This meant that they went into large group settings, often far away from their communities, where the message they were receiving is you're unlovable, you are far away from people who care about you. And they were basically being primed to be re-exploited. And so when I looked at this full system, one of the biggest places we needed to make a dent was changing the way foster care was structured. I had 2 people in my organization. Foster care is a giant system. Right? There's policy, there's money, there's state actors, right? I'm coming in from Sri Lanka. I don't know how any of this works. And at the time I was not even 30, right? So I'm like, holy moly, and I'm not a lawyer, right? Like, what am I going to do about this? And so this is where the power of collaboration and collective action comes in, right? We started doing convenings. We brought young people in. We brought kids who were in the underground street economy in. We brought people who had been caregivers in the foster care system in. We brought frontline service providers in. We brought policymakers in. And we said, what should this system look like? Let's reimagine it. And then once we had a plan, and we kind of looked at what worked and didn't work across the US, and we finessed it for San Francisco, we went to the state and we said, none of us can do this alone. We want to do it together. And guess what? We got funded. We were the only group in California that got funded.
Boom.
And that is the power of collective action. There is no way any of us could have done that alone. But that became the demonstration project to say, how do we transform foster care for this group of kids and test it and pilot it and take what works and change policy for an entire state? And it was only possible because we all came together.
I mean, I'm going to quote Tania Bhattacharya, but she's on the call, so she should quote herself. But I think of just like moving like a pack of starlings, like that are just in movement with each other. Like the power of the collective is so much stronger. And it seems like that's like just the balm to all of our missions as we get people around it. And I want to kick it to you, Tara. I mean, with the Meteor, with She's the First, talk to us about how we can really look beyond the horizon to make decisions that will change these systems.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, what I think about is looking to the people around me who are doing that, in fact. And, thinking about what it is that they are seeing. Right around the time that I first started at the Meteor, a couple years ago, a mentor of mine, back to Girl Rising Days, this global campaign focused on girls' education that actually the film came out about 10 years ago, just this year, International Women's Day. But one of my mentors said something that really stuck with me, which is this idea of artists see round corners, right? So artists, activists, journalists who are really looking into deeply embedded injustices in our systems, people like Alia, Tania, Alex, all of you, they can see round corners to help us look ahead to, frankly, the thing that we may not be paying attention to, that we need to be, even as we're embedded in the daily work of the issues that we're focused on, right? So we know that there's an incredibly powerful and volatile, I might say, conversation happening right now in our country about reproductive rights and reproductive justice. And the people that we listen to at the Meteor, for example, as all of this was starting to come to a head, right? Let's say a year ago, 2 years ago, were the people who were saying to us, you know what, you can't just pay attention to reproductive rights and reproductive justice. There's also something coming for the rights of trans people in our country. And these things are connected. Yes. You can't detach them and you can't separate them. And unfortunately, we can't just work on one in isolation. We need to actually come together and work on all of it. And that foresight, to have a sense of what's coming, to me, those are the people that I look to, because those are the people who are kind of standing on the edge, right? They're meeting the horizon. I'm kind of back a little bit. I'm in the daily grind of what I'm doing, but these are the folks who are really, as we like to say, right, on the front lines and are deeply embedded in the work, and so can see where this is going, kind of 10 chess moves down the board. And to me, that's the most critical thing. Again, it goes back to the listening comment, but it is about finding those people around you. Is it the young people, like the ones you talked to, Alia, when you first got back to San Francisco, to say, what has your experience been? What are the ways that you're experiencing this system as broken? Or is it going to those journalists and understanding what are the stories that you're chasing down? And finding those people. I thought about this word as I was preparing for the panel. Is it a seer, right? A sort of someone who has a kind of sense of premonition, but because they've looked at data, right? I remember a key TED Talk, and I will just be honest, I'm not a TED Talk person. I'm a We Are for Good podcast person, of course, but I'm not necessarily.
I love you for that.
But I went to TED Women, and I heard a talk by Dr. Catherine Wilkinson, who's the co-editor and, of course, incredible climate activist, along with Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. She gave her TED Talk about climate justice. I walked into that room and I was thinking to myself, I'm not a climate person. I'm a girls' education person. I'm a women's person. And Dr. Wilkinson had me in tears because she was making all of those connections for me. She was the seer. She was the one who was seeing around the corner to say, if you care about girls, you better believe you better care about what the planet is doing and what we're doing to the planet, rather. Because what she said was Mother Earth is dying. And guess who are the ones who suffer disproportionately in climate emergencies? It's women and girls. It's vulnerable people. It's people who are living at the edges every single time. So that's kind of how I think about that horizon setting, right? I'm just looking for the people who are standing right there at the edge.
Okay, I got to draw a thread from the conversation we just had, and we just completed a panel right before this one on going further with DE&I, and Preska Bay, who's just an incredible partnerships leader over at the Asian American Foundation, pointed to, you know her, Tara, she pointed to Jonathan Greenblatt, who's the president of the ADL, as being one of the first people to help start the Asian American Foundation. And he said, he raised his hand and said, you know what, we're seeing a lot of hate speech for Asian Americans. We think we need to pull together a collective. And by the way, how can the ADL help you? How can we get this off the ground? And I think when we think about being a change agent, it's not only about the singularity of who we are as people, but we sit in positions of power with organizations, and it's incumbent upon us to say, if we see harm and we can gather with another organization and get in lockstep, girls and climate, which is a brilliant analogy, Tara, we have to step forward. We have to give what we can. And if that is not our resources, because let's be honest, nonprofit, we got little of those sometimes, but it's really about our voice and our experience. And to Tamara's point, the data, we've got to be able to share that because we've all got to be pulling in the same direction. And so I want to kick this to Alex, because I think, Alex, you can just hitch your wagon onto this beautifully with the work that you all have done in your programs over at Born This Way. But I want to talk about this mindset of being a change agent, because everybody we've met at Born This Way has this mindset of the responsibility they have, not only within the organization, but just in this lifetime. And I want you to talk about how having that right mindset, how it changes and impacts programs, how it changes cultures. And we want to know how you're thinking about systems level change in your work and what can be drawn from it for our listeners.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm obsessed with this title, change agent, because I've never called myself that. But I think anyone working in nonprofit, NGO, civil service, et cetera, should call themselves change agents and have that mindset. It's having that mindset, whether you call yourself a change agent or not, going out into the world every day and saying, how can I add good to the world rather than add to its problems? That's crucial when it comes to creating impactful programs. And it goes without saying to everyone on this call, right? We've all seen it through our work, but change really starts at the grassroots level. And that means what we've been talking about on this panel so far, which is listening, most of all, working with communities directly to identify their unique needs, their challenges at a micro level across the board. And then systems level change, right, is critical if we want to create real lasting impact. And that's why we all need to really be thinking about working with partners, working with advocates at all levels, not just, at the federal level or at a global level. We need to be thinking truly from, local grassroots nonprofits all the way to the top, to really advocate for policy changes, highlight what people are saying on the ground for the world to know, and creating movements. And that way we make our communities, more just, more equitable. And then by keeping that mindset throughout of being that change agent, we're able to really just create programs and invest in initiatives that will have meaningful impact on the world.
Oh my gosh. I mean, so much synergy, and I feel like so much hope in this conversation that we're talking about really heavy, hard things, but it feels like it's possible in community. It's possible as we kind of talk about this. And I want to kick it to you, Tania. I mean, as we start to get to some application of like, how can we really activate on the things that we're talking about? A big part of that is using our voice, using our story. I'm seeing the thread here that I appreciate of not exploiting those stories, but doing it in a dignified way. You have this superpower, Tania. This is when we always tap you. Like, you have a superpower of how you can connect with people through story, specifically on LinkedIn, but in social in general. What are you, how do you advise nonprofits to use their storytelling and to just activate an army of people around them through it?
Yeah, I mean, storytelling is definitely a superpower, right? And it's not just a superpower, it's a survival skill. Humans don't have as many physical evolutionary adaptations as lions and tigers and bears, right? We don't have like super big, sharp teeth or claws, but we have storytelling, right? As a very specific way to escape predation, to work together as a community, to like innovate for systems level change, just like starlings, right? Flying in a murmuration. And so before appeal letters and advocacy emails and podcasts, like stories have always been how we have created change. And so just in terms of like a case study for how organizations can lean into that superpower, and I shared this on the podcast on We Are for Good as well, but it bears repeating because I think it's such a powerful case study. If we look at the abortion ban in Ireland being overturned in 2018. And so what happened is thousands of people with abortion experiences were encouraged to share their personal stories as part of this larger sort of like large scale grassroots campaign. And so groups partnered with the Minister of Health and, pledged to share their personal stories. They created conversation cafes where people could come, people kind of who were on the fence, right, could come and hear real stories. There were badges that people could wear in their daily life that said, "Talk to me about repeal." There was storytelling trainings as part of this campaign, right, including messaging templates. And as the vote got closer and closer, they would match up undecided voters with people willing to share their story, right? And so at the end of the day, stories is what really turned this issue around, which was previously, before 2018, so stigmatized and unspoken about, which so many of the issues we work on really are. And to speak to what Tara was saying earlier, like, I'm sure that this work created even bigger picture conversations about the other intersectional issues related to reproductive justice, right? And so I think there's a lot from that case study that nonprofits can learn from and incorporate into their own processes. And that being said, right, it is a deeply personal and intimate decision to decide that you're ready to share your lived experiences. But if you do decide that you are, I want you to think about who out there needs to hear your story, because it will motivate them towards action, right? On those round corners that you see. And you're sharing your story for them, right? It's an act of service for the world that you are envisioning. And so just to kind of, the last thing I'll say is this thing I say all the time is, as nonprofit leaders, we often hesitate to get into the limelight because it's like all about the mission, right? It's all about the organization. But when you step into the limelight, it always reflects like back onto your mission, right? So storytelling is a superpower for sure.
Totally. I mean, I feel like you just nailed it right there. And I think making sure that the story is not one-sided. I mean, here's just a couple pro tips. Tag some people into your post, people that you respect, people that you understand, probably either fight for your work or would have knowledge into your work. Make the conversation bigger than just yourself. Add those tags in there. And I want to keep going on this act of dignified storytelling. We talked about not exploiting the story, making sure that we're walking ethically through our work. And Alia, I feel like you have done that beautifully. I mean, you are a founder that truly walked away from the organization you founded to give up your power and give it back to your Sri Lankan girls, which is just one of the most aspirational things I think we've heard yet. So I want you to talk about the power of listening and ethical storytelling and just understanding the importance of the weight of your words and how long they can stick around on the internet, and how we really want to champion representing a population of people for whom we speak in the most dignified way. Talk about what you've learned in that and how people can apply it.
Thanks, Becky. And John, I have to say, I don't know how you're keeping up with the chat while facilitating
Superman.
this. Remarkable. Superman. So first, let me just say, yes, I'm a 2-time founder, and I walked away actually from both of my organizations as a gift of love. And the first was an organization I started in Sri Lanka for girls who had survived rape. And these young women are extraordinary, and they have such big plans and dreams for their country. And I started this organization when I was 19, and I was working with teenagers, and I used to tell them, like, look at what we've accomplished together. You can do this too. And they would tell me I could do it because I was white and because of my American passport. And I felt it was really important for them to see themselves in a position of power. And so I just wanted to say that. We'll get into ethical storytelling, but you talked about walking away. And I think actually not only do words matter, but like these actions of like who represents and who is the leader matters when people are witnessing change. I think it matters a lot to what is possible. And there are times when it's my time to step in, and there's times when it's my time to step to the side. And like, how do I know when those moments are there? But because we were dealing with issues that are highly stigmatized, ethical storytelling is everything. And I'm a big believer that our words matter, our images matter. They help create the realities we are manifesting in the world. And as a sector, we have an obligation to not only shine a light on the darkest places that we're trying to change, but also to shine an even brighter light in the reality that can be, right? Like the reality we are trying to build, and to see people as full people. So the young women I've worked with, yes, they've been through horrible things, but they're children, they're teenagers. Some of them are mothers, they're sisters. They like to dance and play, and they're silly and naughty, and some are shy and some are boisterous, and some want to be teachers and doctors and lawyers, and one wants to be the president, and they've gone on to start businesses and go to college, and that is beautiful. And that is what we're working for. I'm not working for their darkest moments. I'm working for who they are, right? And we have an obligation and a responsibility to hold that. And I want to just extend this. There was something in the chat earlier about lived experience. And lived experience is so important. Like, we need all different kinds of wisdom in all of our movements. And I have hired, hundreds of people in my career, and many of them have come into my space because of things that you've experienced. And it is so valuable. It is so needed. And one thing I would like to say is that sometimes the first bio I get starts with what they've been through and why they're there. And I am all for owning your story and owning your power. And if you're ready to step into that and work with Tania and think about the change you want to make, go for it. But if you think that I only hired you because of that, you're wrong, right? Like, you are bigger than your darkest moment. We all have to be, right? Like, we probably have people in this audience who've been through divorce or cancer or rape or all sorts of hard things, right? And that is not the only thing that makes us who we are. It is a really important thing, right? But it is not the only thing. And so once we put something on the internet, even if we change it, it is always there. And I cannot tell you how many people I've worked with who have shared their stories at galas or in newspapers or in bios. And then 10 years later, they've come to me and they've been like, not with my organization, but with others, I feel used or exploited. And I don't want my children to think this is the only part of me. And so I just say that because while lived experience is so important, we also have, it's not just ethics, it's a responsibility to hold this with care and to really not re-objectify or re-exploit when we are trying to transform systems and realities that exist around us. And we have a big part to play in that, in our sector as well. And we have a big part to play in how we educate our donors and our community. And that's on us. So I just want to leave us with that, right? Like, it's important, but it's not the only thing, right? Like, we're bigger than that.
I see Tara's comment that's getting the love, that their trauma is not who they are. I mean, that's beautifully said. And okay, I am like grieving because the countdown clock is telling me we have 4 minutes. And you know how we round this out? We have to have a one good thing moment. And you've given us so much. Each of you, I want to thank you for your presence today and your wisdom and sharing space. Thank you for everybody in the chat. But Alex, I'll start with you. Share a one good thing you would leave us with to kind of round out this conversation.
Yeah. Kindness is free, and it has real measurable impact on our collective mental health, whether that's us performing an act of kindness, the recipient of that kindness, and even the witness of that kindness. It has a real measurable impact on our mental health. And in a world where nearly everything has a cost, it's still free. So I'll leave you with that.
The lawyer's telling us kindness is everything. You are the ultimate disruptor, Alex. Okay, Tania, what about you? What's your one good thing?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think it's probably this quote by our fairy godmother, Brene Brown, which sums a lot of this up. And it's, one day you will tell the story of what you overcame. One day you will tell the story of what you overcame, and it will become part of someone else's survival guide. Right?
Ooh,
love that quote.
Mm-hmm.
So love good. Tara, what's on your mind?
Sure. I mean, it's come up so many times throughout this amazing discussion, but for me, the word that I want to leave everyone with is interconnectedness. Just quickly, I think some of you know that I started a girls' magazine, print magazine called Kahani, which means story in Hindi, telling the stories of girls around the world. I don't know if people know, including Alex and Alia, that both LALA and Channel Kindness have had young people submit and contribute stories to recent issues of Kahani. And so it's just to say, look at the power of what can happen when we come together, and recognizing that all of the issues that we're working on individually as part of our organizations have deep and powerful connections to one another. And so really be looking for that, see those connections, seek them out, because our work is going to be stronger if we do.
The world is so small, when you think about this work, and we need everybody pouring into that. Alia, round us out and bring us home. What's your one good thing?
I love that some of our young leaders have applied. Thanks, Tara. Mine is, and I shared this on a podcast episode with you, but it's the theme of my year in a world that's been so dark and heavy, is don't forget to play. There is such value in play, and it is so underrated as adults. Play helps us be more creative. It helps us be more innovative. It helps us connect with each other in new ways and use new parts of our brain. It helps us level power dynamics in ways that are extraordinary. So bring play into your work.
What a beautiful way to round this out. And I love that the link to Kahani got dropped, because I know y'all are looking for stories too all the time, Tara, of women that want to step into their power, girls that want to step into this and have their story amplified. So
Can I add a one good thing?
Please do. Oh
Here's my one good thing for y'all. Do a 1% shift. When you leave this session today, I want you to write something down that's going to make a little 1% shift in the way that you are going to embrace being a change agent. Do it at your comfort level. Do it at the speed that makes, that feels good to you. But let's make a shift, because I think you can feel the energy, the love, the warmth, and the desperation in needing these stories, needing this interconnectedness. We need to know what's happening within your community. We need to know what you see, what you're feeling, what opportunities exist, because we are not defined by the harm. We are defined by the opportunities that go on afterward. Let's create those opportunities for others. You have the power to do that with your lived experience, with your heart. You've got your hype squad right here. All 6 of us, we are rooting for you. Let's pull together. Let's make this movement one that is all about change and empathy. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our guests. We are humbled by what you do, and we're humbled by every one of you in the chat for how you pour into missions. So
go find these incredible humans, follow them, soak up their wisdom. Thank you for joining us. What an honor to have you here.
We're rooting for every one of your missions.
The end of
so
the conversation
keep going.
stage, B.
Go hit the closing stage. We've got
Feeling
closing
sad.
remarks. Appreciate you all. Thanks for joining us today.
Bye.
Bye.